Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are not going to get started until the top of the hour, but you know how we do. We like to get in chat with you as we're preparing to get started. So if you could join us in this lobby icebreaker question, we would love it as you come on in and get comfortable, kick up your legs, come on into the space. We want to know what you think makes a conversation sensitive. Now, if you've been with us before in the Head Start Heals campaign or in any of the other Office of Head Start hosted discussions, you'll know that you can find your Q&A pod down off to the left-hand side of your screen, and that's where you can talk to us if you want to insert any dialogue all along the way. If you have a question, certainly put it there. If you have a comment, we usually try to lift those up as we go along so that for the greater good, we can all hear from each other. And I see a little activity over there now, but I want to give you guys a second to come in and get settled. Some of you are saying things like, maybe it's the topic at hand that makes it sensitive. Sarah, I love what you're saying here, things that feel taboo or very personal. Different opinions, Julie adds in. Elizabeth takes us to a place that talking about any topic that makes parents uncomfortable. So it sounds like you guys are already in this wonderful reflective space of, really processing what pieces can come together to make the conversation feel sensitive. Some of you, it's interesting, I love what you're doing because you're not only thinking about the person that you're going to be with, but you're thinking about what you bring into the interaction. I'm also seeing comments like sharing personal information, and that's from Lynn, or Tracy, brings forward the realness that many of us have experienced lately, which is maybe having to even bring forth bad news. I want to see what else. I'm going to scroll just a little bit. Other words that I'm hearing are things like when folks are in crisis. Again, some nods in agreement to, Sherry, I like this. Sherry said reactions or anticipated reactions. I like this notion about anticipated reactions because we can also get in our own headspace about what we might expect folks to think or do or how they react. And that can put us in a place, in our own reflection process that really is actually pretty valuable. And I hope you're going to see that come forth on several accords today. So I'm so glad you guys are here. We've had such a big week of connection and conversation this week, and I have to say our hearts are so full to get to spend any time with you guys. So come on in and continue to get comfortable. Keep talking to us in the Q&A portion of your platform, and we'll give you a little tour of that here in just a second. But with it being the top of the hour, I definitely want to jump on in because we have so much good stuff to talk about as per usual. Welcome officially to Engaging with Families in Conversations about Sensitive Topics. And today, I'm so happy to report that my name's Brandy, and you'll get a few official introductions here in a bit. And my colleagues from the National Center on Parent Family Community Engagement are here to be your facilitators for this conversation. And if you've ever been in one of the conversations that we host, you know that it is not only our hope, but our absolute, dream and craving that you talk to us, because, we're the relationship people. So we really want this to be a dialogue. I do want to show you a little bit about the platform, because one of our main questions always in the Head Start community is, do I get the PowerPoint? And we say yes, of course. So I want to show you where to find, of course, to ask a question. You can see here on the slide if you'd like to interact in any kind of way, please visit there. And then underneath, you also have event resources, and that's where you're going to find not only the PowerPoint, but a couple of handouts that we are going to reference during our time together today. And also, because this is so important to you guys, I want to make sure we put this right up front. We love to be able to honor the time that you do spend with us. So, of course, this event does culminate in a certificate. And I want to make sure you have the proper instructions to have that get right to your inbox. So here's the trick. You stick around with us the entire time. And at the end of the webcast, our host will actually close the webinar, and you will automatically receive the link to your certificate. But you have to stay and let our hosts close the webinar window for you, and then it will automatically send it over. I'll review that again at the end just to make sure that everybody has what they need to get that documentation for your professional development files. The other thing that we'll have at the end of our time together as well is a little evaluation link, so that way you can tell us what you liked about the conversation, what you would tinker with, things you want more of, less of. We actually pay very close attention to the comments that you give us, because we are here to serve, and we love hearing what you have to say, and we actually make amendments based on your voice. So please let us know. I would also love to give voice to our incredible leaders at the Office of Head Start. They have been hosting this entire series of discussions on the Head Start Heals campaign, and I can't tell you guys, we've facilitated several, but we've also been listeners and participants on many, and every time I leave one of these discussions, I just feel very heard and seen. And we pray that that's the same case for you. It's just been very timely. It's been very connected to who we are and what we do in Head Start, and it feels very reverent of what's happening in current day as well. So we hope that you found the same. And in that vein, one of the things that I'm thinking about is another series that's been very important for us, and actually we're hearing from you guys, very important from you as well. Tell me in the chat, have you guys been over yet to check out the new webinar series on advancing racial and ethnic equity? Tell me if you've been over to hear a little bit, because I have to say we had the honor at the National Center on Parent, Family, Community Engagement to kick off the 4-part series. We did that on August 6th, and you'll see that here on the slide. And we really were I ran out of words to think about the power of the conversation that you gifted us that day. We were able to unpack a lot of definitions, come to common understanding around things and approaches and strategies and personal stories. And then our colleagues from the National Center on Program Management and Fiscal Operations came right behind us on August 20th and took us through this conversation with a true focus on human resource systems as we keep in mind culture, diversity, inclusiveness, and equity. So you can go back and put and see those at any time. Those two, even though the dates have already passed, they still exist in an on-demand fashion. If you go to the ECLKC, you can pull those down through those registration links. And then you have to mark your calendars, if you haven't already, for the final two. Our colleagues from the Early Childhood Development Teaching and Learning National Center will be talking to you on September 10th. And then last but certainly not least, our colleagues from the National Center on Early Childhood Health and Wellness will be coming to think and talk with you on September 17th about health disparities in these larger systems. It looks like many of you have already come over. I'm really grateful that you've already been with us in that dialogue, and we hope that you continue to. We see this as a starting point in a long-time discussion that we hope to continue to have with each other, and we hope that you're inspired to take those into your programs in your local communities as well. So let me pause here for a quick second, because I need to introduce you to the people. I have two of my literal most favorite friends and colleagues of all time with me today on the line, and I can't wait for you to get to say hello to them. And I'm actually going to pause so you can hear their voices straight away right now. And Dr. Sarah, if it's okay, I'm going to go to Dr. Richard first. You know, the Southerner in me needs to go to the ladies first, and then she'll turn it over to you, and we'll come back together.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Brandy. I know Dr. Sparrow was going to say yes, ladies first. So my name is Guylaine Richard, and I'm the Director of Training and Technical Assistance Development at the National Center on Parent, Family, Community Engagement. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. Dr. Sparrow?
Thank you, Dr. Richard. Yes, I was going to say go first, but then I would have gone first. So thank you. I am just so delighted to be back again with you, Dr. Richard, and you, Brandy Blackfacker, and with our friends and colleagues at the Office of Head Start, and with all of you all over the country. I just can't believe how lucky I am to get to be with all of you, and I can't believe the richness of all of the comments in the chat, the honesty and the bravery, and just what the wonderful people you all are. So just thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Joshua Sparrow, and I'm co-principal investigator at the National Center for Parent-Family Community Engagement.
And this voice that you hear now of Appalachian influence is Brandy Black-Thacker, and I'm so grateful to be with you guys. If you've ever been with us before, you know we genuinely and authentically feel honored every time we get to spend any moments with you. And I'm the Director of Training, Technical Assistance, and Collaboration for the National Center on Parent-Family Community Engagement. And you know, Josh, with that, you and I started off pretty early this morning in some dialogue. We were thinking sure together of we were thinking and doing what I would call back home a little plotting and planning about how we really, speaking of being genuine and authentic, how we wanted to stand in a space with each of you today, given everything that's happening in our world. And there's so many things happening, Josh. And I just kind of wondered how you felt about maybe sharing a little bit, you know, of vulnerability about our conversation this morning and how we hope to step into this dialogue together today with, you know, all of our friends here.
Well, yeah, it was kind of early, but I was up and you were up, and I read your email. Can you talk? Yeah, sure. And I think we both felt like we had to talk because our world is moving so fast. And just when you thought you couldn't handle any more hard things happening, more hard things happened, whether it's the hurricane down in the Gulf Coast, or the violence and the hurt across our country that we all hoped we would have been done with a long time ago, and we know we're not done. So so I think we both felt like, yeah, we got to talk about how to talk about things that are hard to talk about, because part of what makes the conversation sensitive, in addition to all of the things that all of you mentioned in your 100 plus comments about what these hard, sensitive topics are, is like how we're feeling when we have to enter into those conversations, like what we're dealing with in our world. And our world is sure a really hard place to be right now, and not what we're dealing with in our own lives.
And you know, Josh, it really brought to the forefront for me this whole awareness of needing to understand where I sit or stand or exist, you know, in that space of all of the hard things. And I'm already seeing in chat several of you are saying, oh my goodness, this conversation, you know, is so timely and so necessary for us to be able to, you know, hold each other close, not only with all of the things that we're holding, whether it's the pandemic, whether, you know, it is, you know, 2 hurricanes at once, or Josh, as you said, violence in our Black and brown communities. We're just, a lot of us, if I'm being really honest, and even in my own personal reflection, are feeling a bit like our tanks are empty, and we need each other to figure out how to refill. And in my little humble opinion, one of the only ways we can do that is to be in that vulnerable and real space. So, you know, Josh and I were just really holding, like, there's so much hurt happening, and we need to acknowledge it. And we also need to say that there is hope and possibility, because we have each other, not in a Pollyanna way and not in a lip service way, but in an actual, real way. And Josh, I know you spend a lot of your career talking a lot about how our brains are physiologically designed to need and be with each other, which, you know, is just so comforting to me, because for me, it's like a personal pull, you know. But I wonder if there's anything you'd add here, because I know we worked together to find the exact words that we wanted to be on the screen. And I wonder if you want to add in a few of our thoughts here and see what our colleagues on the line might add in as well.
Well, only if you'll help me out, and if everybody else who's joined will help me out too. We you know, reflecting is a word that we've all used a lot, and we thought we would stick with it. And before entering into a conversation about a sensitive topic, that is also an important conversation to have, that can really be critical in outcomes for the children and families we work with, to reflect on, how are we doing? Like, we've been cooped up since March. How's that going? We've been trying to work and take care of our kids at home. We are looking at the race-based violence and are scared for our own loved ones, can't handle any more hurt, but no, we're not done. So reflecting on how are we doing in our personal lives, in our families, especially in these times that are tough in so many different ways, and noticing the feeling that I don't know if I've got anything left right now for anybody else. I don't know if I've got anything left to be able to have this conversation about this really sensitive topic. I'm feeling, like Brandy was saying, like I don't know if I can do that. And so reflecting and getting to that point is really important, because then it may be, well, maybe I need to reschedule this. Maybe I need to step back and take some time for myself. Maybe I need to see if one of my colleagues can come do this with me. So beginning to explore, now that I've reflected, like, what do I need to do to be able to make this work, and explore, like, where are these feelings come from? And so it's exploring within ourselves. It's also exploring in, well, what is going to be hard about this sensitive conversation? What's going to be hard for me? What is going to be hard for the other person, the family? And then maybe, like, are there some assumptions I'm making about what's going to be hard? And maybe maybe I need to, like, step back from those and be open to those maybe just being assumptions, and maybe being surprised about there being something else. Also exploring, Brandy was talking about, like, the way our brains are set up to, like, look for danger, look for wonder, threat, and we kind of go there first. But right next to the part in our brain that is focused on our alarm system, like, watch out, be careful, which triggers us to, like, remember all of our assumptions and past bad experiences to make sure they don't happen again. Right next to that is the system in our brain that's focused on our feelings. And so exploring our feelings and honoring them, honoring the feelings we have, like, I'm scared, I'm done, I don't have anything to do this hard thing. And also honoring what we can get to by exploring what we think the family, the person we're going to have this conversation with, might be feeling. Honoring that, that's where they might be at, and this is where I'm at. So it's reflecting and exploring and honoring where we're starting from, and doing our best to try to picture with our imagination and with our humility and with readiness to be wrong, where families might start from.
Mm-hmm. Oh, goodness, Josh. I'm so grateful for your, just the fluidity and the connection that you made with the words. And I have to say, one of the things that really hit me this morning was they need to be verbs. They need to be action-oriented. And it needs to be, like, also that we're not only in service of each other, but I know who we are in Head Start, and I'm so honored. I've never been so honored to be part of our national community. We have a heart to serve. And so, Josh, I heard you saying so many things. Not only do we need to be, in action in service of each other, but in service of ourselves. And so I see some of the comments that are coming through, which are just incredibly powerful. And one that I wanted to pop out here in particular, and it comes from Melissa. She said, although I feel a lot of stress lately, I also feel blessed to have people in my life who've been supported and willing to chat, about the things going on. But Melissa, it was your next statement that really, brought this home for me, because I completely share this with you. She said, I worry for families that we work with and support who don't have these kinds of connections. And, one of the many reasons that we wanted to, bring this dialogue forward is for that exact reason. That we have the distinct honor to get to play that role for so many families and to get to do it in a way that does, what do we say, Joshua, reflect, explore, and honor not only who we are, but certainly who the family is and what that means for each of us based on our individual journeys. So we're going to actually get concrete here today and talk about, a few things. Yeah, Josh, jump in. Go ahead.
Before you leave that, I just want to sort of linger on what you just said and to say there's another comment. What about a higher power? Nobody ever talks about it. We can't do it all by ourselves. That's why the world is so crazy. Talk about a sensitive topic. Talking about, no one talks about the things that are sensitive. And spirituality and religion, that's one of those things that, a lot of us may be wondering, can we talk about that? Can we go there? But over and over again, spirituality is one of the things that people come to, regardless of their culture or what organized religion they do or don't connect with. It is over and over one of the places where people go. And I just wanted to connect that to what you were saying, Brandy, because when we're talking this morning, we talked about how when you reflect and explore, you can end up in some really dark places. And when you're thinking about approaching a sensitive topic with a family, and a lot of you people put topics that are dark places for people, like triggering past trauma, things that are really personal, things where you've been shamed or felt vulnerable or felt judged. So it's exploring the darkness and honoring that, yeah, this is really hard for me, and then this is really hard for the person I need to talk with. And then looking for the light. And looking for the light in yourself, which the person who talked about spirituality, that's the light for a lot of us, and others have, other places we look to for the light. And then as we move into preparing ourselves for this conversation about something that's sensitive and so important, to try to look for where is the light we can already picture in that person, in that family. Where's the strong stuff? And so often in the families that we work with, it's their passion for their child. No matter what the sensitive topic it is, no matter how hard things is, no matter how much people may be struggling and you may be worried about the child's well-being, so much of the time, part of the light is passion, really wants to do the best by their child.
Well, Josh, what can I say? So well said. And, that resonates with me today, not only as a person who has a heart to serve, but as a mama, of course, and that's been so much of our dialogue. You guys are coming back with, in whatever program model you've set forth in COVID times. Some of you have come back in person. Some of you have a hybrid model. Some of you are still, planning. Some of you, you just have really leaned into your local communities and your health departments to make good decisions with your family voices included. It's been incredibly powerful to see what you've done and what you've accomplished and the way you've continued to be the heartbeat of your communities. And so, Josh, when I think about everything that you said and how we each hold that child and each other as, the true focus of our attention, and I'm going to just say it, adoration, it really allows us to get into a concrete space, because even in the chat, I'm seeing things like, well, let's talk about it. Like, how do we overcome the obstacles? How do we actually step into that space on what might feel like words that came up in the lobby icebreaker, like taboo topics or topics that I'm worried about or that I might feel judged around or that might be triggering for other family members. We have some ideas to share with you today, and you can actually prepare for all of this. So, Josh, thank you so much for not only the early morning phone call, but for really being a friend and a colleague for me and working through so much of what I was holding and coming to understanding around, and having the benefit of your brain is always a good thing.
Right back at you, Brandy. Right back at you.
I'll take it. Everybody heard that, right? Write it down. All right. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate it. Well, let me do a couple more logistical things before I bring on, the one and only Dr. Gillian Richard. I want to take us back to where we left off because some of you joined us in a previous Head Start Heals conversation we actually coined challenging conversations. I wanted to give you a little nudge about why this is different than that. Now, they're connected, of course, but this is distinct in the conversation that we had with you guys last time around challenging conversations. We gave you these 6 steps to prepare, or what we would say kind of plan around. So things that you do before you get into a sensitive or a challenging conversation. And we're going to touch a little bit of that again today, but in your resource pod, I just wanted you to know there off to the bottom left-hand corner of the platform, you can download, we have 3 resources there for you today. One is the PowerPoint. One is the resource that has the 6 steps embedded in the preparation. And then where we're really going to focus our time today is on what you do not only before, but during the conversation and after, because it is a whole spectrum, right, of this continued dialogue and connection through relationship. And when you're in sensitive conversations, every single piece of that matters. So we want to not only show you the ideas and concepts we have at those 3 sort of points in time, but also unpack a little bit of concreteness so that we can not only share tips and tricks, about what actually works out there, but certainly open the space for you guys to share. So for the greater good, we can offer those kinds of reflections to the whole group today. And with that, this is what we set forth. For those of you that know us, you know that we actually, plan these objectives before we meet you, but we're watching the chat very specifically, and we're going to bring up some of the questions that you have along the way, and if we need to hover there, we're going to. So this is what we've quote-unquote budgeted. We want to talk about some tips, which Dr. Richard is going to do in just a little bit, about, getting engaged in those sensitive conversations. We have those time frames or those points in time that I mentioned, the before, during, and after, that we want to peel apart a little bit. And then, of course, we have some resources to show you in case you want to extend or expand in a bigger way. So if we're starting with the end in mind, here is what we hope you can think about with us as we go forward. One key message here that you can see on the slide is, one of the really powerful ways of being together is making very intentional choices about the words that we use with each other, and Dr. Richard is going to take us through that in just a little bit. We can actually be thoughtful about how these conversations go, and Josh even alluded to one of the tricks that comes up, which is like, if I'm not in a place where I'm not filled up, maybe I could wonder about delaying the conversation so that I can be more in service to another. And certainly this last point couldn't be underlined or exclamation pointed enough, that these interactions are critical, for each of us for sure, but also fully support and impact in a positive way family well-being. And you guys know when we just say family well-being, it's not just the words, it's from the blue column of the PFCE framework, and it's one of 7 family engagement outcomes that are critical to who we are and how we all do in these Head Start communities, what we do around growth, both for families and for children. So with that, I want to check in with my colleagues, and specifically, I want to connect with the one and only Dr. Richard. And I'm going to behave myself today, G, because, I usually give you a huge fanfare and drum rolls. But I'm just so excited for the folks to hear you jump in that let's get right to it. Come on over.
All right. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you so much. And thank you for not having the fanfare. And I know why, because you don't have that energy probably to do it. Thank you very much for doing it. All right. And I want to really take our attention to 3 tips that we're going to be sharing with you for engaging in sensitive conversation with families this afternoon. But before we do so, let me take a quick second to really remind you of something that we all know. When we build positive, goal-oriented relationship with families, this begins with interaction between the families and us as staff. And when Brandy was talking about language, I want to really point out that when we make this intentional choice about the language during this interaction that we're having with families, that help us build trusting, respectful relationship with the families. This relationship really can support us in and the families in partnering around the goals that they have for themselves or for their children. So I bring that up because, I'm probably going to be taking a minute to reflect on some of the, the jewels. I call them the gift that we're sharing with us. But before I do so, I would like to explore with you what can make a conversation sensitive. And I'll probably just use very much a cultural instance with you, a cultural fact with you. As you can by now, you understand that I was not a Native American, and I am from the Caribbean. Anytime somebody would say something about my child, for example, being obese, because at 6 months my child weighed 30 pounds. That would bring a lot of sensitivity to me. Why? Because I would have to explain to you that my mother-in-law was the matriarch of my household, because that's what our culture does. So she was the one feeding my child. So myself, when you would tell me, oh, the child eat too much, or why are you putting Porridge in a 6-month bottle, that would bring some anxiety, because for me that was too much for you to let me unveil to you that although I'm a physician, all those things, the knowledge and everything, but my mother-in-law was in my household and she was the matriarch. So everything she said had to go if I wanted to keep my marriage. So So some of those sensitive conversations, for example, like, the challenging topics may be related to concern about family safety and how children are feeling and are being cared for. So that's what my example was for you. Whether a topic is challenging depends on individual staff members and their experience too. What you find challenging may not be challenging for another staff. What you find challenging for this family may not be for another. And many of the topics that we find sensitive, find really sensitive, are considered sensitive because they are bringing also stigma, or they can be too personal. Too personal because they have to do with something like opioid use. They may have to do with homelessness. They may also have to do with domestic violence. All the things that somebody would not want to share in the open until the trust is established. And even when the trust is established, it may be very sensitive for someone. Some topics also may be challenging for staff because they bring up difficult memories for the staff, or they may be even current challenges that they are going through themselves. But when we do that, when war and vulnerable feelings arise, staff may wonder how they can maintain their professional stance. Otherwise, what I'm seeing is like, if I am as a staff had some issues myself with it's very sensitive for me to talk about certain things that I also have experienced or even experiencing in my own household. So what is a personal stance then? The personal stance really refers to how you present and conduct yourself with your peers and the families you serve. It shows the value and commitment you bring to your work. And I want to say that your professional stance is simply informed by the way you think about who you strive to be in the work you do. These feelings are very common for staff who work with children and families. The distress you feel at first can lead you to a deeper empathy and and really provide for authentic caring. It's like, I know what she's going through because I've been there at times, or I know because a family member have been there. It can also lead you to greater appreciation of your strength and the family's strength. So when we turn to trusting relationship with, when we turn to peers that can help us and supervisors that also can help us, that really help into getting to those sensitive conversations. So moving forward, I'm going to just we're going to explore a little bit of what, like the way we engage with families, but this is not something that you're not very familiar with, because those are things that you probably have, have gone and explored this tool before with us. And when I'm talking about strengths-based attitude, and also we're going to talk about strengths-based practices. Like, as I'm putting them, I'm not going to take a lot of time, but I'm going to want to quickly put all the strengths-based attitude first. And I want to say, what is an attitude? An attitude is the frame of mind you have towards someone. It's meaning like, the way you see the person. So for example, when I say that families have expertise about their child and their family, that means that you may have, and I usually say that because I usually say that if you can understand that each child is not in the book that we have. For example, I may have a child that can do something, and I am going to the families and I am thinking that, oh no, what she says, no, children cannot do that. And again, I'm going to tell you something that happened. I was, as a physician, very afraid to tell people that my child was potty trained before he was 1 year old. Why? Because in my culture, they usually would have us start potty training at 4 months. So it was very difficult for me. Even I had the knowledge, even I had the thing to let people know, because I know the people that had the knowledge in the United States were telling me that would have told me that I was doing something wrong. So it was very sensitive for me not even to reveal that interest. But I had expertise about my child, because I remember when Givens went to childcare, the first thing that they did for 2 months, they didn't let my child go to the bathroom. My child would not go to the bathroom because the teacher was using the wrong term, was doing potty. My child didn't know potty. My child knew toilette. So you see, even the thing, some little thing like this, if you had, and I was upset because I didn't have I knew that for people, I had to put pull-ups on my child when I was sending him with really nothing to the child care. So now I'm going to be looking at, so how do we do practice? How do we do the thing that we do to make sure? So those are the attitude, and they are tools with you. When you are with that family, you may think, okay, this family have expertise about their child and their family. So if the family tell me, don't put a pull-up on my child, that means I need to find why, in order for me to not have a very sensitive conversation with that family, or even engage into that sensitive conversation. So I'm going to really go ahead and put all the practices. The reason why I'm doing that is, because I know you're very familiar. You have been using them probably, but I would like to take one more of the practices to experience what we just said. So value a family passion. Value a family passion means that even if the passion is positive, meaning like the parent is praising you, the parent is calling you, the parent is telling you a lot, the parent wants to be with you, all the passion is expressing itself in a negative way, what we call negative. I saw in the chat where people said, "Oh, okay, whenever I'm really on the fence when people are going to react another way." But this practice is really engaging you to value the family passion, meaning yes, this is that person is mad. That person is mad because I'm talking about her child being obese. Why is she mad? Because what I'm telling you is that I love my child. My child is obese, but I can't reveal to you what is going in my household. So I hope that illustrates a little bit of how sensitive conversation can come, specifically with culture. So I am going to be now going to, explore to you why do words matter. Remember, what we're trying to do is build positive, goal-oriented relationship with the families. So when you have that in mind, this is what is I consider that the glue of one of the glue parts that will keep everything together, because you are mutually respectful in that partnership that you're having with families, and you focus on their goals that they have for themselves, goals that they have for their children. This relationship promotes parent-child relationship and family well-being. So let's go ahead and explore very quickly some tips. Remember, we promised you tips for engaging in sensitive conversation. The first one is use people first language. What does that mean? I am going to summarize it with you that way. Instead of saying like something that would be putting a qualifier, you are defining my child, or you're defining me by the circumstances I'm going through or by the issue. This is what we call, you need to be changing that mindset and using people first language. Instead of saying a disabled child, you say a child with disability. Instead of saying a child with behavior, a child with bad behavior or difficult behavior, why don't we look at it as a child with a behavior that is challenging you, that is making you uncomfortable, instead of putting the discomfort on the child. So that's how we call, that's what we said, people's first language. Don't put a qualifier, don't put an identifier on someone, but let's put the thing. And usually what I would say to you, if you want to do that very quickly, is all the time use the word with, okay? So instead of saying a disabled child, put a child with a disability. Use the word with. So use language to honor each family's culture, language, and experiences. I gave you some of those examples, my own example, but I think this is very important for us to understand family's culture, to understand what is important to them, and to address them with those words that we're going to be when we're having those sensitive conversations. Recognize that each family has their story. I like that. They have their story because their story is their own, and the way it may not be the same story that you heard, it may not be, don't try to compare it, listen and get their own story. But we got to also remember, you saw we put this because the 3 tips that we wanted to give you are the use person, people first language, use language, show on the family's culture, language, and experiences, recognize, but we really want you to also remember that you have a story. So your story may be the thing that is coming into play when you have this sensitive conversation with families, or choosing a topic, seeing a topic that may be bringing sensitivity to the relationship that you're trying to build with a family. All right. Brandy, I'm going to need probably your help in a quick second, because I am going to actually ask my friends there on the line with us if they could, go ahead in there, and do the poll. We're gonna do a quick poll with you. We're gonna give you about 25 to 30 seconds to do that. But what we want to hear from you, what we want to know is which of the tips for engaging in sensitive conversation do you find the most helpful?
And Dr. Richard, you just gave us a beautiful tour, of each of these. And so we wonder which ones that you guys are drawn to, and if it's more than one. Because a lot of this, I know, G, we talk a lot about, is probably confirmation, and we're seeing a lot of that come through the chat. So we just were curious to see what and where you would fall in this dialogue based on the tips that Dr. Richard just brought forth.
So let's look at what we see. Wendy, what do we see on those poll, because in the poll?
I am looking, Dr. Richard, to see if I can pull that down for you at the moment. The anticipation.
I could see it. I could see it. It's so great.
Oh, good. Tell us, Josh.
Okay, so it looks like recognizing that each family has the story has got 67.7% of people behind it. Next is using language to honor each family's cultures, languages, and experiences at a close 65%. And then at 48% is using people first language, which is still almost half. And sounds like people could check more than one to get all those percentages. And also in the chat, there were a lot of comments in the Q&A about person first. So a person with this condition, not a person who is defined to or reduced to the condition. So there you go.
All right. All right. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Josh saves the day. Thank you so much for that. And I know that, Josh, you mentioned the Q&A. While Dr. Richard was speaking, I know we got a couple of questions that I wanted to see if you want to tackle here, and then we'll be also looking at the chat for some questions for Dr. Richard. And here, before I turn it over to you, Josh, I know that you found one that we'd like to pull apart before we transition into the place where you're going to take us next. I just wanted to give you guys a little heads up. If you've ever been in our webinars before, we do what's called like an after chat. We stick around with you because we could just spend all day if you let us, but we have to be respectful of your time. But we do stay on after the 90-minute webinar ends for at least 15 minutes to think together with you and continue to take questions and answers. So please keep those coming in that, questions area that's off to your bottom left-hand side of the platform. But Josh, there was a topic that came up I know you wanted to bring forth as we transition to your content. Let me pause here to give you the space to do that.
Oh, there are so many really important points and really probing questions here. One of them was when a child experiences behavior changes in the class, one of the first questions most educators ask a parent is, are there any changes in the child's home environment? This can be a very sensitive topic that many parents may not want to share when asked. I'm so glad that that was brought up because, that is so often what happens. And of course, it makes parents feel like, oh, so you're going to look at me and what's going on in my house to explain what's going on in the classroom. And so here, and I wanted to focus on this because I think it is about the sensitive topics, is reflect on what role we might have in what's sensitive or what's hard. And honestly, I think leading with our own vulnerability, taking ourselves off of the pedestal, getting out of the way so that parents can bring their expertise is so important. So for here, I would say something like, wanted to let you know that your child is having a hard time in the classroom, and this is what it looks like to me. And, I'm thinking maybe this is a hard time of year because, kids are just coming back and it's a new group or whatever it might be. But my point is, own your side of it, own what is going on in the classroom, own what is going on with what you can actually see. So you're sharing the responsibility. And then before you ask about what's going on at home, I would ask, are there things that you're wondering about in terms of what's happening in the classroom that you think might help us understand this behavior? So you're also modeling a kind of, humility and not being defensive. It's like, you can tell me, let's talk about stuff you're concerned about that might be going in the classroom that might help us understand your child's behavior. And then I think if you can say, thank you so much, because I hadn't seen that, and you're right, this may be something that, there's one child who left who your daughter was so close to, and maybe that's it. And I'm wondering if there are things, and then you can get to this question of, are there things that you think your child might be, experiencing or worried about or being affected by outside of school, outside of the center? So that you're really working your way towards, asking the part that we know is sensitive by starting by being vulnerable, being humble, and modeling that, you have a sense of safety about acknowledging that there may be things you need to listen to that you might want to really pay attention to and maybe work on. There's also a question about being triggered by one's own trauma. And it was a really lovely comment because it said, I have a hard time, here it is. This is what I'm struggling with. I have to learn how to deal with my past experiences and problems. Oftentimes topics are triggering for me, and it's hard to keep it together. So again, the honesty and bravery and the soul searching that you all bring is, part of why this work is so hard, because we're doing the human work with our hearts, and also why it's so rewarding. So for this one, we've done some webinars on trauma and healing that you can access on ETLKC. We will very soon be posting some briefs on trauma where this is addressed quite directly. But so great that you said, I need to think about this and look at this, because I think that's one of the first steps is like, get to know your triggers, get to know what are the times, places, people, feelings, events that trigger me, that bring me back to some painful experience, some loss I experienced, or some trauma that I experienced. You get to know what those are, because then you can prepare yourself and not be caught off guard, because one of the hardest things about being triggered is you were planning on being in your professional role, having this conversation, and then you got caught by surprise. You got ambushed by your own trigger. So I think getting to know your triggers is an important part of this. And once you do that, then you can do some reality checks. Okay, this is reminding me of the traumatic experience that I had, or of the person in my life who's scary for me. Now let me check into what's going on right here and now. Is this really what's happening? And that can be a hard thing to do when we bring our own traumatic experiences that make it harder for us to know who, when, and how we can trust. This is a really important question. There's more to say. And again, I'd refer you to some of the earlier webinars that we've done for Head Start Heals on trauma and healing, and to those briefs that are coming out. And also, when you know your triggers, to do what we said earlier about reflecting on, can I do this right now? Is there some help that I need? Is there some coaching or support that I need from one of my colleagues or a supervisor so that I can do this? Do I need to have someone come and do this with me so that I'm not alone with my fear of how I might be triggered?
Oh gosh, I really appreciate. Well, I just run out of words some days. I'm just ever grateful for the chance to stand in the space of not only reflecting about who we are and what we bring into the interactions, but certainly keeping in mind the way that we receive others and the way that we can honor each other in all of those. In all of those ways, especially when we have sensitive things to tackle together. And I know where you're going to take us next. It's kind of the little anticipation that I gave us at the beginning. We have these notions of these time checks or points in time, if you will, of before, during, and after these sensitive conversations. And we've kind of aligned it with this notion of prepare, partner, and pursue. So you're going to kind of see us bring them to light, and Josh is going to do that for us. And what we want to do is kind of get your stream of consciousness, too, about things that come to you when we say, well, what kinds of things or approaches do you use before the conversation? We're going to check in with you about those, and then we're going to share some things that we came up with. Right, Josh?
Yeah. So are we ready to hear from all of you about how you prepare? I saw one comment that said something like, it's so much more easier to have a conversation about a sensitive topic when from the very beginning you've worked on building a strong relationship with our parents. So the preparing is partly preparing the relationship before you get to the sensitive topics, before those come up in your partnering with parents. And the preparing is also the reflection, exploring, and honoring that we talked about before. So in addition to reflecting on how you're doing, what you bring, and imagining what the parent might be bringing, there's also preparing the physical and virtual environment. Now, one of the things that many of us will be reflecting on right now is it safe to go back to the center? Will someone who comes to the center bring in the COVID-19 virus? Will I bring it in? Will I bring it home? And for centers that are open, the physical and virtual environment, will it signal to families, we're doing everything in our power to keep your children and you and all of us healthy and safe. So that's a whole new thing that we're all dealing with right now. There are other things to think about, like how you position where you sit. And often, and this is just an example, when you sit straight on face-to-face with someone, it can feel kind of confrontational. Whereas if you sit side by side and ear to ear, it feels it can feel a little bit less intrusive. So just an example. Also, you might want to be sure that you've got something to drink to offer, although these days with COVID-19, you may not be able to do that. Is there, are there tissues in easy reach? And, if you're really worried about this conversation, do you have another staff person in the room with you? Are you close to the door or to a way that you can ask for help? Are there things that you can have around the walls that, sort of signal to family members how much you care about children, like children's artwork or, photos that families have allowed you to use of them, or information that might come into play. So prepare the physical virtual environment. We talked about learning about your own perspectives, about how you're doing in this hard world and in your own life. And also, what are your own perspectives about this child, this family? And one of the hard questions that sometimes I don't think we dare to ask ourselves is, do I like this child? How do I feel about this child? Do I like this parent or this auntie or this grandparent? How do I feel about them? How do they make me feel? So it's really important to check in with that and to recognize this is not my favorite child. This is not my favorite person to work with. I mean, it sounds horrible to say, and that's why it's hard to do. But say, okay, I'm gonna have to like work harder at this to find the light, to find the good stuff. So learn about your own perspectives, and in the resources, there are more thoughts. For example, check in with your feelings about approaching this topic. Again, as one of you all said, is this thing gonna bring up some of the triggers for hard things in my own life? Am I feeling like I'm over my head with this? And then there's learning about the family's perspective, and we put this in the prepare so that you can try to gather information. What do you know already about what their concerns are? So as Dr. Risha was saying, if you know about their culture, are there some questions that you might want to be sure you have in your mind about, how things might look for them, what might matter to them, what might be sensitive for them to talk about that might not be for you, how they might see things in ways that you hadn't been prepared for. And then there may be colleagues that you can talk with that can sort of help you fill this in. And also, in your prior interactions with them, what's your sense of their level of comfort and trust? And are you asking them to do something that takes more of a sense of safety and trust than they have yet? And if that's the case, maybe sort of holding back a little bit and going more slowly. So are there ways that you prepare before you enter into these kinds of conversations?
Josh, I am seeing a lot of things here come up in the chat that folks are thinking about, and even things that you have inspired, like Josh needs to teach me how to have his calming voice. And it is in response, really, to being triggered.
Like I put everybody to sleep.
No, the comment is really to honor. It says, when I'm triggered, my voice does something, and I'll share this. I was saying this earlier to somebody. I have no poker face or poker voice. So it's really part of like the physiological reaction that happens when either you're about to get into something sensitive, or it's your perception that you're getting into something sensitive and you're having worries. Because, and side note, we wouldn't feel worried if we didn't really care for the folks that we're trying to really make these connections with. So, Josh, I love that notion of what you said about preparing is really about preparing the relationship as much as your physical environment and some of the things that he reviewed here. But I want to pause just for a second. I know we have 2 more points in time that we want to unpack together. But you guys brought up a lot of good questions about, okay, well, that feels pretty natural and organic to who we are and how we operate if we can see each other in person. But what are the strategies to bring forth if I'm on a Zoom meeting or if I'm having a virtual interaction like this one? So I want to pause for, Josh and G, what do you guys think about that? I have a couple of ideas that we've tried, but let me pause here and see if you have Zoom strategies or virtual strategies.
We're still talking about preparing right now, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So for preparing, first of all, we want to make sure that the family has access to a device they can use, to data to allow them to get on the internet and stay on the internet, that the time we set up works for them since it's going to be in their home if that's what's going on now, or in the place where they can get internet connection, and checking in, before the conversation about, is this a good time and place for you to sort of be where you need to be with maybe whatever, people you need with you or whatever privacy you need. And then think about what's going to be on your screen and what you're comfortable sharing and what you want to make sure you're not having appear on the screen. I can't wait to hear what you have to say, Brandy and Dr. Risha.
Well, it was very similar. I mean, I think I'm grateful, Josh, that you brought up the point about, preparing in a way that makes sure families have access. And then also what we bring into the space, I really feel like, you know, in this moment and day and time of everybody being in your living room with you or your kitchen, I find that I'm making very intentional choices about creating what I would call back home as a homey space, so that folks kind of see part of who I am and see part of what means something to me, but also somehow brings a comfort, you know, to the interaction, almost as a subliminal cue. And it's incredible, you know, like what has happened with that and the curiosity that folks have had. And you know, we even saw in the chat, one of our colleagues brought up, I feel that actually in the days of my Zoom home visits, it enables me to have more challenging conversations a bit easier. And there is that notion sometimes of, you know, being able to connect through a keyboard is sometimes allows us a little more bravery, perhaps, or, you know, through video chat than we might otherwise experience. So I felt like that was really interesting and pretty cool to see that, you know, that's an impact.
I keep hearing that. And I have a friend who is a palliative care doctor who's been working with families who have relatives in the ICU because of COVID-19. And he said, you know, working with these families in their own home is actually so much better than having them in the hospital because it erases the power imbalance. They're on their own turf. They're in their own comfortable space. They're on their couch. They have their cat on their laptop. They've got their coffee mug, and they have who they want to be there. So, yeah, I've been hearing this a lot.
I find that interesting. It really takes me back to the place of, you know, having a foot in gratitude and blessings and having a foot in, you know, the real. And I heard a little breath. Was that yours, Dr. Richard?
Brandy, you want me to see one thing that kind of for me would make a big difference is like, you know, when I am behind, when I am in that Zoom platform, I feel also that, you know, we have a communication, but I'm not straight in front of this person, but we can really connect anyway. So I think, you know, for me, that's where my mind went immediately when I saw that. I said, well, this is really good that people would be feeling very more comfortable. It's not that I am in the room with you, but I am like not physically there as far as being at you know, too close for comfort. That's what came to my mind, and I'm sharing with everybody. But this is definitely, we can have those conversations, but we're not too close for comfort. Yeah, because, you know, I think somebody raising their voice may be very difficult for me to be in front of you and not run away. But if you were like, you know, if we're talking on the thing, I can still stay there in a safe place. We're both in a safe place, and we can continue.
Mm-hmm. There are so many great comments in the chat, and thank you for that, Dr. Shar. Sorry, Brandy, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, this reminds me of, and then Josh, I definitely want to hear about those chat comments, because as we pivot to the partner or the actual during the conversation, it reminds me to kind of take a step back into knowing who we are in Head Start and what we do, and giving ourselves permission to feel like, I got this. Because, you know, Dr. Richard and I lead a lot of conversations across the country with what we call sight unseen families. So families that we can't get to for whatever reason, whether they're deployed in the military or they are experiencing incarceration, or they are migrant and seasonal and may be out of our, you know, service area at the moment, one of the family members. There are so many ways that we might not be able to be with families in person, and we're really good at staying connected. And so what you guys have taught us in this entire time around COVID is that you're finding ways to go back to basics. Even a handwritten note, for instance, that comes home with a picture, because we have families that are working, of course, 2 and 3 jobs, and even a handwritten note to say we're so grateful to have your most precious gift here at Head Start with us, if you are back in person, is a huge thing. And even if you're not, I mean, even if you're doing virtual, as a parent, I would be over the moon to have that kind of care and to have that kind of consideration for us as a family. And so anyway, I'm just saying that I'm just grateful that we're continuing to think about it and talk about it, because it is in service of coming closer together. And I think we have all kinds of things that are already in our back pocket that we can pull out for this purpose too. All right, Josh, it's your turn. Do you want to go to a couple of more comments or questions, or would you like to pivot over into the partner approaches?
Well, there's one that I feel like we have to speak to, even if our answers are woefully inadequate, and that's how do we deal with Black fathers being murdered with our families? And you know, there's in that question, there's also, you know, if you are working with a family where a father who is Black has been murdered, I guess what comes to mind for me is listening first to what people are feeling and experiencing and thinking, so that you can get to what they need. And there's not going to be one answer for everybody. And that's part of why listening, and it is sort of this preparing. And I think also listening to ourselves, like, what is this doing to me because of who I am, because of who my people are, where I come from, because of the privilege that I do have or that I don't have, because of the color of my skin. So, you know, in listening to my Black and brown friends and colleagues, what I, you know, am hearing is this is something we have to live in fear of every time we go out the door or one of our loved ones goes out of the house, is that they don't come back because they've been murdered. You know, I think, you know, if you're a Black or brown person, you know what your experience is, and if you're a white person, I've listened to, you know, some of my white friends and colleagues, and they've been, you know, they've been surprised it's been new. And so I think the listening is also to try to get closer to having that full range of, like, what is this doing to each of us and to our experience. And personally, I don't think anybody can ever, like, really understand what it's like to be someone else, but we sure as heck can try. And when I say, you know, listening and learning, there are two caveats to that. And one is there are a lot of people who are sick and tired of people not getting it and not understanding, and this not already having been super obvious a long time ago. And I think we have to respect that there's, you know, for some people, there's just kind of like an exhaustion about that, and it's a burden to have to keep on explaining it. And then I think for people who are just beginning to realize, you know, for people who are white, who may just be beginning to realize, and, you know, some people who are white have been aware and kind of on this for a long time. There's other feelings that go with it, like, God, I had no idea, and there's guilt. So, you know, the listening and learning is like understanding that there's a lot of really hard feelings that are going to go with that, talk about sensitive topics. And then I also think to recognize the inadequacy of listening and learning, because it's not enough. And I think some way, again, sort of looking at, well, what's the part that I can do, given little old me? And then committing to do that part and speaking to it. And sometimes it's just speaking up. But I think it's being clear that listening and learning has to be followed by action, because when we're talking about, you know, someone losing their loved one and life being threatened, we have to speak about the actions we commit to taking as well. So that's my little woeful, inadequate attempt to speak to that. And I'm so glad that, talk about bringing up sensitive topics, that you brought that up. And these are things that we need to start, you know, figuring out how we can talk about together, and then moving from the talk to the actions that will stop the harm, stop the hurt, stop the violence, and help with the healing. I want to stop and ask Brandy or Guylaine if there are things you would add or change or disagree with. I was working too hard on that to be able to read the things in the chat, so that'll give me time to catch up.
Josh, thank you so much. I wanted to just add, because, of the comment that we have been witnessing in the background, and also as a mother of black children, I have 2 sons, and, the heart-wrenching thing that can happen to a mother to hear your child say that whenever I see a police now, I'm just waiting for the click. It hurts. It's hurtful, and so we got to acknowledge it. We got to really understand it, not understand it to a point where we have, but empathy is it's very important, and understand that when a black mother is saying, or a white mother of biracial children or whatever is saying, I'm tired, that means, yes, we are tired. And, so thank you very much for going there with us, but also understanding that we can't not continue. We got to keep on doing what we have to do, and not feel so tired that we paralyze.
Sometimes you just don't have the words. When I hear what's happening in the chat, and when I hear Josh and G, your words come forward, it circles back to me as feeling and being inadequate, Josh. But I am ever grateful that you modeled for us what it looks and sounds like to give life to the dialogue, and to do it, in a way that, just tells the truth about who you are and how you feel and what you know and what you might not. And it just feels authentic, and it feels like, it's real. And it's real. And you guys really inspired that connection to the real. And as Josh said, we're ever grateful for that.
Yeah, and there's another comment that says the systemic use of guns to murder African American men and women is continuing, adding multiple layers of trauma to children and families. Then these families are left with nightmares, tremors, fear. It's horrible and needs to be addressed at all levels of government, legislation, and local communities. These are our Head Start children on the Start clock. So, I was really careful to say listening and learning in action, and it's action at every level, and you just laid out, what a number of these are. And I did say, we have to look at what each one of us can do as little old me, and then also what each one of us can do when we come together. So it's not either or. I also have to say, I think there's a lot of, perpetuating of the hurt and the struggle and not moving forward because there is so much misunderstanding and so much hurt. And I think we also have to look for the both ands. There's a comment, we need to relearn empathy and respect. And that's in addition to, and what are the actions that we can take alone and take together? So I'm going to, it's an amazing conversation you can have with 2,500 people. Thank you, people. So I'm going to move on to consider the family's cultures and structure, and consider what it's like to be in their family right now, which is what we're just talking about, and to understand whether or not you're in a position to have an awareness of that, or if you come from a different place, and to recognize that, so that you can be ready to be humble and expect that you don't know, and to get help learning what you need to know. Understanding some people may feel like, I don't have the energy to teach you people anymore. so yeah, consider the family's cultures and structure, and that goes with all of the things that Dr. Richard told us earlier about what some of these very sensitive things like food and nutrition and toilet training mean in different families and in different cultures. So then there are approaches to partnering, being a guide from the side. I think you've heard from before, and that fits with what I said about the physical environment. Think about putting your chair is sort of ear to ear, so you're listening ear to ear instead of eye to eye. So you really are from the side creating this kind of partnership where you're really honoring the wisdom and expertise and the good, positive intent of parents, no matter what the sensitive topic is. Ask permission and explain why. There's something I would like to talk about with you. Is it okay if we talk about? And here's why I'd like to talk about it. I know this can be a hard thing to talk about. It's not, it's not easy for a lot of people. It's not easy for me, but it's really important because it can make such a big difference in, the way our partnership goes and, how we all feel about working together and how, your child feels comfortable and trusting the school, which I know matters to both of us. So you're also looking for where, underneath whatever conflict it might be, what your shared goals are. And that takes being flexible because you're going to look for like where the shared common ground is before you get to, here's my part of what I'm concerned about. Be present. And that's an interesting thing to think about, again, using Zoom. And I've also been hearing from people, especially home visitors who are, taking their home visiting onto Zoom. And they're saying, I'm so used to like picking up on so many different pieces of information in the interaction. And with the screen, I've just got like what I see and what I hear. It's actually helping me be focused and bring all of my attention and to be present. And it's also a way of showing this may be sensitive and hard, but I'm going to bring all of me to it. And that means not, you might need your phone with you in case you need to call for help, but it means not answering it, otherwise not looking at it. Listen carefully and use silence. Yeah. So leave pauses. Don't start talking until there's been a bit of silence after the other person has spoken. Use silence to show you're really thinking about what they said and you're really letting it soak in. And also to reflect on what you're going to do next so that you can check in with yourself and notice your first reaction may not be the one that you want to bring to this. So there's more to say about partner approaches, of course, and it's in the resources that we've begun to share with you. And then the pursue approaches are really about how we make it clear that we took the risk of having this hard conversation together. We're touching on a sensitive topic, knowing how important it is to you, notice how vulnerable a topic it may be, how close you hold it to your heart, how much it matters to you or to both of us. We're going to honor that also by not forgetting it, by not letting it just kind of fall off the table. But we're going to stay with you on this. We're going to follow up. If what we learned together was that it would be good to be able to have more people connected to you to work on this with you, to do our part to connect. And sometimes that really takes getting on the phone. And if you go back to the partner part, sometimes in the partner part, I'll just go back to that, it might be, this sounds like something that you really want help with or you're really ready for help with. I'm so glad that we got to talk about this together. I know you're really busy and it's hard to reach people. Would it be okay if we tried to reach so-and-so at this community resource right now and see, what the deal is? So that kind of, warm handoff right while they're there, or else like come back, if you're not ready, could you come back again if it's on Zoom and we can try to figure out how to connect with the resources in the community who may be able to help with something that I can't. And then I'm going to turn it back to you, Brandy.
Thank you, Josh. Oh, my goodness. I have to say there is a lot of gratitude happening in the chat. Folks who are saying, thank you for honoring what was on all of our minds. Thank you for touching on this topic that feels sensitive, but that we have to, Josh, your words, come to action around. Thank you for the reminders of things that we already have, in our tool belt, if you will, because, we are really good. We're really good at what we do. But also having this notion of the modeling, that's happening here that we get to experience together in and through those compassionate and empathic, but real ways. I love the balance, that comes forth today, in the dialogue, so that it doesn't feel disingenuous and it doesn't feel, I guess the word I used at the top of our time together was Pollyanna, but it feels like an awareness, and it feels like an act that, we can move forward on together. And so with that, I know that Josh mentioned a little bit, so a couple of things. We're still going to be hanging out for a little bit. We end the webinar at 4:30, and that's Eastern time, but we're going to hang out for lots more questions for what we call after chat. So please keep those coming, things that you would like to lift up for the group to share or that's on your mind or heart today. We're happy to bring that forward, or if you have other questions for Dr. Richard and Dr. Sparrow, we'll lift those up. But I wanted to show you guys this image here. All of these resources are available for you to download always for free at any time that you would like them on the ECLKC. But we also brought those over into the resource pod for you today so that you wouldn't have to go digging anywhere. So if you found any of the tips and tricks that were mentioned today as useful that you'd like to extend or expand back in your program, you can find those there. And, I guess one of the things that I want to leave you with here are a couple of key takeaways. And a couple of you actually mentioned this in the chat. We talked about practicing, and as you get to practice these approaches ahead of time, because one of you had the question about what happens if it's in the moment. Well, this is great because you're already kind of practicing and planning now. Before whatever next interaction that you're having, you're going to have these built up almost like a muscle memory, so that when you come into that space again and either you're feeling it in your body or you're anticipating that this kind of sensitive dialogue might come forth, you already have it ready. So as you practice these tips and approaches, your confidence grows, and these conversations absolutely become easier. And wow, what kind of impact can that make when you're really able to be with each other in that truly authentic way? And I used to say, and some of you might have heard me say this before, I used to say in that authentic way, even when it's hard, but I guess what I would offer here is especially when it's hard. It's what we need to grow together. And certainly, I mean, you guys know we're your literal and physical biggest fans. Just as families are the experts in their situation, you're the expert in your role in your craft. And we know what kind of sophistication you bring into this field, and we're just deeply grateful for what you do every day in service of each of us and the families and children that you serve. And certainly, as the said relationship people from a little earlier on, you'll see that, of course, working through these conversations not only makes our relationship stronger and more rewarding, but often, even if you get to come to that, and I'll call it this, and it's on purpose, the opportunity for repair. Like if you have a mismatch and you get the chance to take a step back and recalibrate a little bit with each other, it just strengthens your relationship and where you can go from there. So sometimes I take Dr. Richard, your sentiment earlier about the power of language, and also I guess would layer on, with your permission, the power of perception and the way we see, hear, and feel the ways we get to be together. I want to show you, before I give you one of our closing quotes and we move into the Q&A period, I want to show you a couple of places that you can stay in touch with us, and more importantly, with each other. If you haven't come to the My Peers community space over on the ECLKC, please do that. It's wonderful. There are many, many public forums that you can join in, and we actually host the one called PFCE Deepening Practice that you see here on your screen. But what's awesome is many of you are dialoguing about these exact things together because it's for you, by you. And if we see something that you're thinking or talking about that we can say, oh gosh, you know, we just finished a resource on that, here it is, just in case it's useful. It's really been a cool thing to see how each of you have band together in those communities to support each other with COVID questions or other conversations that you've been looking for support on and around. And just another way not to feel so lonely, to be honest. I mean, we are all in this together, and many of us are experiencing similar things, and this has been a wonderful place for connection as we've been physically distant. The other thing that I want to show you is if you haven't checked out our Text for Family Services, come on over. The water is fine. All you have to do is text PFCE, that stands for Parent Family Community Engagement, to 22660, and you'll start receiving some texts. I think it's about 2 a month. They're available in English and Spanish. And I know I've said this before, but I have to say it again. It's like I get them exactly when I need them. You know, they're moments of encouragement, and they give nudges towards resources sometimes, and it's just been another way that I've been feeling connected with each of you and as we do this work together. We do have another Head Start Heals webinar coming up on September 15th, and I'm really excited about this one just as much as the one today because we get to bring forth the PFCE framework. And if I was talking about this to anybody, I would say it like, you know it, you love it, you live it, you have it memorized. But this time we're going to take it from the angle of how to promote healing and resilience. And, you know, in your programs, many of you have said this today, you appreciated the way that Josh and we bring into the dialogue, of course, the awareness and acknowledgement of trauma, but a real focus on healing-centered engagement. And so that's happening on September 15th, same time as today, 3 to 4:45 Eastern, and you can go over onto the ECLKC and register there. I also want to give you a quick reminder, please come and visit us in the Advancing Racial and Ethnic Equity upcoming webinar. You'll see 2 of those coming in September, one on the 10th and one on the 17th, and you can find the 2 that have already happened on demand if you just go to those registration pages. They're absolutely worth the time to look, listen, and contribute and bring them back to your programs. The other thing that I wanted to offer anytime that we come into sensitive conversations in the PDF that you have, and so this is going to answer a question and offer a resource. Many of you asked if you can have the PowerPoint, and the answer is yes. It's already over there for you in the resource pod, so you can download it. And in the PowerPoint, you are going to have access to a couple of national hotlines. So if you or anybody in your program, families, your colleagues, your community folks need any of these resource lines or hotlines, they are there for you. You'll see here SAMHSA's Disaster Distress Helpline and also the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. And also there's a second slide here that brings up more issues that you guys brought forth today, specifically domestic violence came up in the chat a few times, and in terms of sensitive conversations, that seems to be a theme for each of you, but you'll see a couple of other resources here like Strong Hearts, if you need support around child abuse and neglect, and certainly substance use. They're all here for you. I do want to put on the screen quickly this link for our evaluation. You'll see it at the bottom of the screen. It says SurveyMonkey, and you can click that and go right over and fill that out. And I wanted to offer again, a couple of you had questions earlier about how you get the certificate. So let me say that again, so make sure you have what you need. You just stay right here with us until our hosts close out the webinar. And once our hosts close it out, you will get an automatic email to the one that you registered with that gives you your certificate. So don't you close the window. Let our hosts close the window for you when we finish, and then you'll get that automatically at the very end of our time. But with that, I want to leave you with a quote, and then I'm going to turn over to both Dr. Richard and Dr. Sparrow, because they've been looking at the chat come through, and they've been lining up a few things to bring forward for you while I've been giving you a few of these logistical bits here at the end. But this is one of the quotes that I love from Maya Angelou, and we are deep admirers of her work, and we brought forward other quotes from her before, but this one, as you can see, says, "We can learn to see each other and see ourselves in each other." I feel like I just need to pause there. We can learn to see each other and see ourselves in each other and recognize that human beings are more alike than we are unalike. And that's what we hope to inspire today and every day. Let's find each other in our eyes. Let's figure out the ways that we can make and maintain those deep connections, especially when it's hard. Let's come together in ways that are real, that are aware, that are acknowledging, and that are action-oriented. We really do need each other. And I guess I would pause here to say, together, we are better. And with that, Josh and G, I know that you've been looking at the chat, so I'm going to pause here and see what you guys would like to lift up as we have officially transitioned into the after chat. What did you guys find?
Josh, Dr. Sparrow, with your permission, I'm going to go ahead, since we pick up the same comment. So if you allow me, I will go ahead and read it. To,
you do not need my permission. I was hoping you would.
That was a
Thank
teaser.
you.
That was a teaser, and you took out of it. That was a teaser. Kristen, we did that a lot. But, thank you for your words and concern. Healing action really needs to take place for humanity's sake. I'm a Black mother and wife, and I'm always concerned for my children, husband, family, and friends. There needs to be empathy and humanity. Your words, those words resonate with me, and I really like to say you are right on the money. But there is one that before that, Dr. Sparrow, that I bring and that I heard, that I think, we can take too as a word of advice to all of us. We need to start having those hard conversations. We need to. Dr. Sparrow? Anything you would add?
Well, I really can't add anything to what you said, my friend. I think just to, we're looking at the questions. Some focus on action, on voting, on policy, on holding people in authority to account, and some focus on sort of this inside of each of us and what goes on between us. And I just wanted to add that I don't think it's either or. Some may be more natural to some of us or feel more immediately necessary or possible, but I think, the change that has to come with listening and learning, is not about one or the other, but all of those things.
Another one that Dr. Sparrow and Brandy, that I would love to highlight is what we call the action. Action is very important. That one of our friends shared with us that action is very important. She feels that there is much lip service, and it is difficult to see where people are really trying to change beyond I can't imagine what they feel like. Having sensitive, going to sensitive topics bring us that discomfort, but I like to see the action as being even brave enough to step a toe in the conversation. We're gonna be uncomfortable, but I think that gives us this opportunity also to show the vulnerability that we have and start creating that link between two human beings. Because if I'm pretending, and that's what I'm reading in there, is there's lip service, meaning like, there is no action really that's gonna come. So therefore, coming to someone with a sensitive topic, coming like the one that we have been talking now, and I can tell you, this is very sensitive for me, having two sons of the age of where I see Black men being murdered right now. But, if I don't talk about it, if somebody doesn't talk about it to me, how do I express my feelings? How do I tell people about it? So sometimes it's very hard for us to take even that action, but that action is necessary to hold each other tight enough to go and say, I don't know what to say, but I would say something. Let me say something. Allow me to say something even. Allow me to be by you, to walk with you through this.
Gee, I know that you and I get into these conversations a lot together. So as you're talking, I just feel so connected because I know that you and I engage in a lot of what could be considered sensitive dialogue. But I guess I have to bring forth, because there's deep relationship, it takes me back there. And it's almost in service of the relationship that we get to go there. And it inspires for me a hope and possibility that, in our community across this country, we really do a great job at being able to build relationships. And even if families aren't ready for us quite yet, we don't give up on the notion that we're still going to be here when they are ready. And part of that delicate dance is being able to lean out and lean in as they are ready. So part of the dialogue, and I think this question came up a little earlier, so Josh and G, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's kind of like, oh my goodness, there's a lot here to think about. Like, where do I even get started? Like, what is the starting point, even with my preparations? And part of it for me really is about the exploration of readiness. And that's not only for yourself, but who you're about to be with. Because if I'm a family in crisis, like most of us have been, I might not be ready for you yet, but I could be soon. And I think another one of our colleagues in chat brought up about how timing is so critical in being able to be thoughtful and planful, not only before but during the conversation, based on who you are and what you're going to bring into the interaction. So if your tank is empty, but also where is the person you're about to be with? Is their tank empty too? And how honoring is it? So, G, if I call you up on the phone, because, when Dr. Richard and I get on the phone, it is just, an automatic, we just go, right into conversation with each other. But how honoring is it if, I can say to her, girl, I'm in a space today, and I'm wondering, if we can just jump right in to pull it apart, where we're going together. But I'm empty, so would you give me some graciousness if I stumble on a word or a thought? And it just, reminds me that bringing the human element forth in these conversations is just so important. So let me pause there. I'm inspired. I'm inspired by the relationship. I'm inspired, by the words that you've brought forth, and I'm inspired with possibility.
And Brandy, that's okay, and Dr. Sproul, please feel free to jump in that one, because Valerie asked us actually in the action. When we talk about action, do you advise that we should be the first to initiate the sensitive conversation? That's a very interesting question, a very good question. And when I heard Brandy giving just a nudge on how we start conversation, it may not happen like this because, that comes with building relationship, in my opinion, but in my humble opinion. But, hey, if this is something, if you want to partner with the family, not bringing the conversation, and you remember Dr. Sparrow took us to the prepare, to the during and after, but part of the prepare may be also that you tell yourself, if my partner is not going to bring it, how do I bring it then to that partner in ways where there would be no judgment, no hurt, but there will be asking for permission to enter a place where I feel like as a partner, I may be able to contribute.
So, is it okay if I say something now?
Yes, Josh. Go ahead.
Oh, were you finished? Sorry, we're talking about leaving silences. Yeah. Do you advise that we should be the first to initiate this sensitive conversation? I think it depends on who we are and who we are in that moment, and who we're with. But the thing this question makes me think about is, I've been in a lot of conversations where, my Black and brown friends and colleagues are saying, Josh, you need to speak up. You need to talk. You need to say something. So I'm not sure that always applies to everything all of the time, but I think that one of the things that I actually don't remember hearing at other moments when there actually was change, I was probably too young then, was that observation that, people whose skin is not Black or brown, need to speak up. And sometimes they need to be the first to speak up. But again, it depends on sort of who we are, who we're with, and moment. And I think I'd add, I'm also hearing from my Black and brown friends and colleagues that part of the fatigue is, when I bring it up as a Black and brown person, I hear, then I get pegged as, one kind of stereotype or another for bringing it up, or then I have to deal with what people say. And there's a lot of reasons why, I think I'm hearing that white people need to initiate the conversation about race. Other sensitive conversations, I think in our roles, if it's a concern about a child's behavior or a concern that, the child may be experiencing abuse, or a concern that there may be some concrete material needs that we might actually be able to connect the family to, I think we do have an obligation to initiate the conversation, but initiating it doesn't mean coming straight on with what we think the challenge is. It means creating the space where that can be opened up. And it means sort of starting with where the family is and not necessarily with where our concern is about what's sensitive.
Yeah. I like the way you said it, John. Come on. Don't come at the person. Come with the person.
With G, you said that earlier. That feels like something to hold close. You said come with the person, and earlier you said even with language to bring with. So it's not about describing an individual by their situation, but by who they are as a human being. And well, I don't know if I could leave us on a better sentiment than that. I can say thank you so much. I do want to, of course, thank each of you for your time with us today. We know how busy you are. We know everything you're juggling, and to have any moments with you is, as we mentioned before, a true blessing and an honor. We want to thank our leadership at the Office of Head Start for creating a space for us to bring these real conversations to you and with you. And I want to thank my partners in crime, both Dr. Sparrow and Dr. Richard, for coming along for this conversation and so many others. And we just want to leave you today with deep and hearty gratitude for everything that you do every day, and we can't wait to be back together again. Thank you so much.